I think it needs to make sense too, and also have foots in reality that feel familiar, even though it's a very fantastical world. I think it needs to feel understandable and familiar. So I always make sure there's diversity, first of all. How boring if a world does not have diverse cultures and accents and people and stuff like that. And so, specifically in the Everseas, they go to these different islands as they're because there's different. It's a world of water, right? But there are islands where there's different houses and different nobles. So I made those the noble houses, but then there's the royals, and that's where the king lives. But like in a lot of old historical cultures, there are factions, right? That there's noble houses and things like that that kind of make up the the leaders of the land. And so there's these different areas that they visit, but there's this one island that's kind of insignificant. However, they have a completely different religion and like a clan on that island. And so even just that small detail where he's greeting them differently than he would someone else at like their brothel that they go to and stuff like that, because he respects their religion and in their area of his kingdom. And so he greets them with like a ritual almost. And so things like that, like the smallest details that real don't completely impact the story, I feel like have drawn people in. And it also helps um solidify your characters a little bit more and develop your characters. So that scene, while maybe the world building wasn't necessary, like you didn't need to know that there was this clan on this island that believes a different way, but it showed the female main character in the Everseas that this morally gray villain who just kidnapped her respects people and like has a lot of care for his people, and it kind of starts to break her like angst against him. And so it just gives layers, I think, to the world. So as you're building, just really build, what's your religion? Are there multiple? Do they believe in one God, multiple gods? Do they not believe in any? Are they, what's the common characteristics? How many different, what's their what's their laws? Things like that, So it takes a lot. World building can take a lot, but when you get it, I think it really immerses readers. The worlds are so important no matter what you're writing. Even in contemporary romance, you need to set the setting nicely so that people know where they are. And it feels like they just walked into a new world. Book four in the Everseas. It was severely delayed when the series was picked up by my publisher from being indie. And it is so exciting. So it's another of Eric and Livia, the main characters of the first two books. They're friends. So um, it's Eric's cousin and Livia's good friend. She's another princess that's from the Broken Kingdoms or whatever.
Is that Myra?
And yeah, Mira. So anyway, they're kind of lost, and so you get to explore more of the Everseas too, and I'm really excited because this is where I'm kind of stuck right now because it's world building. I am actually creating my own like new type of magic species, kind of. And so I'm going to introduce them in book four. And the world is it just keeps splitting and growing. And so there's going to be some slight connections to the Broken Kingdoms that's going to come to play in this one, but also very Everseas, of course, because I wanted to keep those series, even though it's a second gen, I wanted to keep it accessible for people who just want to read the Everseas first. But it's a lot of tension. Grumpy Sunshine is basically the romance trope. There's a lot. I think Tate, the male main character, he has maybe even more issues than Eric Blutzinger did. So hang on tight. But it's been fun. I've been going through my Norse mythology books and bringing some myths into play with this one, so I'm excited for it. The Everseas will be 6 books. The publisher has that arranged for sure. I have some independently published series that I'm working on that I'm pretty excited for. I kind of like this idea of dropping people in. You know how in a lot of fantasies or romanices that they kind of build up to the uprising? In the books, like that's the story. I kind of like the idea of dropping someone in the middle of the uprising, and so there's these enemies lovers on these opposite sides, and it just immediately they're mid uprising in this one. So I'm kind of excited for that. But probably won't be until 2027 or like later because of other publishing things that are happening. So that's my plan. So in Broken Souls and Bones, that was my I wanted so badly to create this world that truly felt like you were stepping back into like a Norse culture. Even though it is fantasy and it's very fantasy based, I wanted it to feel like, oh yeah, I'm here with the Vikings. And so I mean, the original idea came from Legends of Berserkers, and that's actually instead of smell this time I actually started with the idea of the magic system, and that created the world. And then of course the first scene is smells. You can always see it. Now everyone goes through and they're like, "Oh, LJ said that it smells like mist and rain." So that was like where I am. But yeah, so this one came from that legend, and I was like, I wonder if I could create a magic system that created these berserker legendary fierce warriors. And but yes, like the first scene was I wrote Lyra's first scene first. It's not she's not the first chapter. I went back, but yeah, I do step into their eyes. Like, what are they seeing? What does it feel like? What, is it kind of a rundown town, which she kind of does. She lives in like a seaside village, but she's very a wallflower. So I did with her, with that particular character, she doesn't want to draw attention to herself. So she's always watching people. So a lot of her first things are just observing her world for the reader. And that world was an intense one. It took a bit to write. So, but the magic is very much embedded in that world too. So that's why I think it took so much. It can play on you emotionally because, like you said, you're in their head and you play multiple roles. So I'm not the people that I write all the time. They have qualities that I probably want to emulate in my own life, but I don't go around slicing people up with swords and things like that. So it can take a lot out, especially battle scenes. I struggle at the end of battle scenes. I almost have to take a break because they're so intense and bloody and people die in them. And so it can be very, very emotional. But also, I am like, I get anxious. So I get procrastinate sometimes, and then I'm speeding to a deadline. So it can be very exhausting to be a writer. I know everyone thinks it's just like all peaches and you're just sitting down every day and typing. No, you're going through battles, you're going through trauma, you're going through all these evil things that happened from the evil overlords in your series. And you have to get into even the villains' heads sometimes because you have to know their motivations. So that if you're a lot of creative people I know, they're very empathetic people, and that can really play with their emotions to the point where they're like, I need a break. I need to go watch a comedy or something like that. So there's a toll. I love Rourke. He again, he's my first nonverbal main character, and that was a challenge. I really wanted to be sensitive to the community who doesn't speak verbally and things like that. And so I did a lot of research. I have an audiologist in my family. I have some speech therapists, so I interviewed them to like make sure I was handling it hopefully as best I could. And I loved his complexity. He's not you get pieces of him throughout the whole series until you figure out who he is. And I love book two. I just announced the title. It's called Heir of Twisted Lies, and it is a lot more of Rourke's world and like what made him who he is. So it was a challenge to create this guy who, first of all, uses sign language. But I actually loved that because as I was writing, I'm like, this is building tension because he has to get close to her and he speaks against the skin a lot on her. He doesn't always have to, but he chooses to with her. And so I love that that added to their tension because it forced them into proximity with each other. And they're similar in personalities more so than some of my other books. Like Lyra's kind of quiet and shy, and she doesn't really want to have the attention, and neither is Rourke. And so they kind of relate to that eventually, where they're just like, we don't want people looking at us. We just want to be in the background. But obviously, they're the main characters, so they come to the forefront pretty quick. But yeah, I don't know. He was a very complex character, but also once I got to know him and his personality, he just kind of started flowing. The second book digs into deeper parts of the world. So you're going to see other areas of the map. And I'm really, really excited to, like we talked about with world building, we talk about different cultures and different customs. And they all kind of have the same religion and stuff in this world, but they have very different customs in their various areas. And I'm really excited you get to see some people who are just mentioned in the first book. You actually go to that area, I guess, and they travel a little bit. You get to see a lot more of the enemy kingdom, which is the Dravens and the Dravenmoors, and you get to see their customs, which were so fun to write. They're the ones that they have like the wolves, and you get to see their connections and their magic system a little bit more. It was a big focus in Stonegate in the book one and like the bone magic, but now you get to start seeing like more of the soul magic and things like that, and so it's pretty cool.